Okay, I will now open the Estacada City Council. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so you can have roll call, please.
Counselor Dunsmuir. Present. Counselor Gates. Counselor Hughes. Here. Counselor Lidkey.
Present.
Counselor Strobel.
Here.
Counselor Tenbush.
Here.
Mayor Drinkwine.
Here, thank you very much. Okay, we are at the first citizen and community group comment. And do I have one here? All right. Trina Feldman. Yeah, just step up to the mic right there. And you have 3 minutes. Don't be nervous.
All right. I was told my beliefs were in the 3% by a council member. I was told by this counselor that 90% of the people of Estacada did not get a say in having the project turnkey take over the Red Fox. So I did a Facebook poll. On that poll, I polled 4 different groups. My question was, I got a question for the citizens of Estacada. Would you support a project to turn Red Fox into a homeless shelter to house homeless people from all over Oregon? I got over 200 responses on that. The majority, I'd say 99%, said no. Most of them, the main comment was, don't turn Estacada into Portland. And then, Jerry, your comment. Your comment was, I can honestly say, no one on city council is currently or has any plans to turn the Red Fox into a homeless shelter, exclamation point. At some point, the pot stirring has to stop, exclamation point. No one is working on bringing a homeless shelter to Estacada in any capacity, exclamation point. This isn't something that is happening and never has, exclamation point. Just stop it, exclamation point. It's not a thing, exclamation point. Well, Jerry, it seems like most of the counselors or half the counselors on here are out of touch of what the citizens of Estacada want. Last week, we had the public housing analysis, and I saw 1.5 people here. There was, Strobel was there, and Lidkey was there for half of it. Not one of you guys were here for the comments. The comments were, stop turning Estacada into Portland. And for you, Jerry, I've got a thing on what Project Turnkey is, so you can educate yourself on it. It is a homeless shelter. So not only are you out of touch with what the people want, you're out of touch with what Project Turnkey is. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do I have any more? Okay. We're moving right along to the consent agenda. You've all had a chance to read over the consent agenda. Can I have a motion on the floor to accept?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, can I have a second?
Second.
We're first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. All right, we are now at department and committee reports. So I will start off, Cherry, on this end this time.
Thank you. I am opening my notes here.
Okay.
So the school board met on the 10th of this month, so last week, and student council gave an update on what's going on, what's new, and what will hopefully start again. One thing the student council was very excited was to bring assemblies back instead of doing Zoom assemblies. So that the mandates have been loosened up and lifted. They're really excited to get some kind of back to normal pre-pandemic activities rolling again. A high school play, Alice in Wonderland, will be kicking off Easter weekend. I heard that correctly. And there were some updates from the operations report from Mr. Mike Weir. I won't get into the weeds of all of that, but I think the most important thing, everyone knows about the mask mandate being lifted. That's not new news. However, the new three-year calendar was approved. The proposal passed, so they are going to a 4-day school week next year, with Fridays being a read day, REID. Forgive me, I can't remember what the acronym was for, but basically it's 2 hours on Friday to assist students who are struggling in a class or who just need extra help. School year will be just a tad bit longer. They're adding a week in June and starting early, right before Labor Day. So it won't shorten the summers by too much. So they had to make a little bit of compromise there. They've reworked this calendar like 9 times. So I think, they've really listened to the community. I've jumped in on all the Facebook Lives and, listened to teacher comments and staff comments and everything. And I think that, while there will be some people upset over the 5 days going away and having the extended 4-day, it seemed like that's been the consensus of what the community, staff, kids, families, for Estacada, what's going to be good moving forward. So that was really big news. And that's all I have on my school board report.
All right, thank you. Joel, do you have anything?
No, because I was just trying to see, I didn't notice that there was a meeting on Monday, kind of got it last minute and missed it, so I'll have one for next round.
Thanks.
Nothing this time around.
All right, Jerry.
Nothing really big to report. The Arts Commission's moving forward with some projects that are, going to happen a little later down the line. Trying to get collaboration with other commissions, which is exciting. To see them reaching out to other commissions and collaborating on some of the events that they do, like possibly some of the events that the Downtown Estacada Commission does in Parks and Rec. It's exciting to see them reach out and trying to collaborate on some of that.
Just a reminder that the Parks and Recreation Department is having the Sprint into Spring event that is on March 27th at 2 p.m. at the Campanella Estate City Park. There is a 1K fun run for kids that is free and a 5K run for adults that they're asking $15 per person. And just as a reminder for everybody, this is a fundraiser for Wade Creek Phase 3, and every dollar that is donated or raised during this fun run is going to be matched dollar per dollar from the Ford Family Foundation. And so this is a really great event and we're all looking forward to it. And I really want to encourage everybody to go online and register in advance, even if you don't plan on running, because again, this is a fundraiser. So let's raise some money for Wade Creek Phase 3.
And on my end, I attended the C4 for Clackamas County. It was very eventful. They were setting the priorities for this next season on C4. So housing is obviously at the top. Tolling is a big one that we're going to revisit. And funding, that's going around. Unfortunately, we don't see a lot of that funding because we are not in the metro. So we're going to have to figure out how we're going to do this. But that was mainly what they were doing, is setting their priorities for the next year. So what ends up happening a lot in C4, just so you understand, is because we are out of the metro, we don't see a lot of funding that comes down the pike. So when we're asked to do something and we don't have the funding, we can't just reach out and say, hey, send us a little funding. It doesn't work that way. So mainly the cities that face that are Sandy, Estacada, Malala, and Canby. We all sit at the same table. We're all outside the metro. So just so you get a little understanding, when I always come and I talk about C4 and I say how wonderful it is to be a part of it, at the same time, some days it's not. When I see how much funding is going around in these cities that we miss out on, and that we don't have an opportunity to partake in. So that being said, that was what our C4 was all about. So I appreciate you listening to my little rant. We're going to move along. So I will go to the interim city manager's report.
All right, thank you. I just have a couple things. Good news, the facilities plan update that was sent to DEQ has been approved. Just got the letter from our Public Works Director this morning that he received. And so it says the facility plan is approved by DEQ for funding purposes. I look forward to seeing design and memorandums regarding improvements or replacement of this City of Estacada wastewater treatment plant. And they are requesting us to submit a signed and stamped final facility plan update. So we'll be working with our city engineer to get that over to them. And looks like we are good to go with that. And then secondly, the water line repair that for the water line that runs under the 211 bridge, they worked on that today. I don't know if you saw the equipment. It was pretty amazing. I was going to post it, but I ran out of time. So they did the investigation. They tried to make the repair today, but they will need to come back to do that. So they'll have to reschedule that when they can have the traffic control and the machine, the truck with the big arm, when they can coordinate that all at once. They only had to turn the water off for just a short time to the water customers on the other side of the river. And they'll have to do that again when they come back. So we'll make sure that we're getting them notice so they know what day to plan for. But it doesn't seem like it's a terribly complicated repair. So hopefully the second day when they know now that they know what they need, they'll be able to just get that all done. And then lastly, sign up for the fun run. Signed up this week. I probably won't run the whole way. I saw the course map. It's a long ways. But I'm going to be there. It's going to be fun. My daughter said she's going to run and she wants her cousins to come because she doesn't want to walk 5K. That just would be torture. So anyway, but anybody that wants to walk with me, come on out. It'll be good.
So now that the DEQ has approved the facilities update plan, how soon will we start actually scoping out potential properties?
We will start on that right away. And actually, I want to talk a little bit later about funding for that also, which we want to get started on right away. But I'll talk about that a little on the last agenda item. So, but yeah, we will get started right away. Chris, our plant operator, is our plant operations director, is very relieved to have this approved and be able to move forward. So yeah, good question.
Great, thank you. Okay, we are now at council business. So the first thing on council business is draft ordinance 2022-004 and ordinance amending Title 16, development of the Estacada Municipal Code. So I will hand that to Taylor.
All right.
Here is
Thanks,
Taylor.
Mr. Mayor, can you guys hear me?
Barely.
Let me see if I can prop my screen. Can you hear me?
Sadie's
better
working
now?
on, not much better. Sadie's working on the audio a little bit, but if you can turn it up, that would be great.
My audio was weird earlier today, so
Where's it coming out of? Okay, put on mic there.
is this better?
Yeah, enough. I think we can hear it.
Yeah, as long as you keep speaking up, that would be great.
Okay, I'll yell.
Okay.
Okay, so for just a little bit of background, after so this is an ordinance potentially, if we go forward with it, this would be an ordinance amending the annexation application requirements that we have in our code. And the purpose for this is because the issue that we're having is that after the council approves an annexation, the city has to submit notice to the Oregon Department of Revenue, DOR, and they process the change in the taxation district boundary. In order to process that change, DOR requires a legal description of the property that very precisely matches a properly labeled illustration of the property. And that legal description and illustration, they don't require it to be a formal survey or a plat, but the requirements that they have for that level of precision is certainly approaches the level that's required for a recorded survey or plat. So our code, however, does not require applicants to submit a filed survey or a recorded plat. They just have to submit the legal description along with an illustration that is stamped by an engineer, a certified engineer or a surveyor. And so a lot of those ones that we receive, that satisfies the code requirement for annexations. So the annexation gets approved, and then we take it to DOR, and those ones in particular, as opposed to the ones that have a recorded plat or a filed survey, the ones that don't tend to get kicked back to us again and again and again because DOR needs it to be different than what is submitted. So it's creating a lot of delay, first of all, because the taxation district boundary changes don't go into effect until DOR accepts those changes. And then second of all, it's taking up a lot of time, basically my and Sadie's time, getting these rejected boundary changes and having to, try to update them according to what DOR is asking for, and then often gets rejected again. So there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of time, staff time being spent on these things. And so we are thinking that if we can amend our code to better match what DOR is going to require in the first place, then it won't take so much time on the back end after the council has already approved the annexation. The difficult thing about it is that we don't know until the annexation is approved whether or not DOR is going to accept those boundary changes. So we need to figure out some way to manage that better. So basically, this is a request for the council to give staff the go-ahead to look into that potential code amendment. A code amendment has to be a council-initiated project, and so that is what this request is. I will say that this staff report and the attached ordinance is super preliminary. We haven't done a lot of digging into this or gathered a lot of information about it yet. That's kind of what we're asking you to direct us to spend the time on. But I can tell you already that the language that we would come back with, if you want to move forward with this, will be different from what is shown there in that draft amendment. I have reached out to the county surveyor to see if they have any, had any immediate reactions or thoughts on that proposed language, and they did have some feedback already for how it should be worded differently, at least according to their perspective, with how surveys and plats get recorded. And then I also found a resource that was published by DOR that is intended to help local jurisdictions kind of guide them through the process of these boundary changes. And so that also has some information that I think we'll be able to incorporate. And in that resource, it looks like there might be an option for the city to either require the applicant to, well, I'll go into that later. But so that's basically what the request is can staff go ahead and move forward with getting into the weeds with this code amendment so that we can have a much more smooth annexation process, basically.
Okay.
So we're not actually approving any amendments right now. What we're doing is giving you essentially the ability to move forward with changing the amendment or, with redoing it, right? We're not actually approving changes on anything today, right?
That's right. You're giving the go-ahead, or you are initiating the code amendment, and then that directs staff to go and do all of the research required and coordination with the other agencies. And we would involve our county planner with that process too.
Oh, sorry. As part of that process, I know that we as a council had asked that all code amendments or ordinance changes go through the DEIC as kind of like a first step. Is that something that we could send this through as well? And I ask only because I'm thinking of one of the last properties that we annexed was not being annexed for the purpose of subdivision, but was being annexed so that that person had access to city water. And so just thinking about that scenario right there, it might not be someone who has money to go and pay a surveyor. And I don't necessarily want to, as a city, make it a harder thing for them to be a part of our city if they just want access to something like water by making them go and pay a surveyor to survey the plot of land. So I would really like to see this kind of amendment go through, or a proposed amendment go through the DEIC and have them provide their recommendations to us at the same time as the next time that we have this conversation.
Absolutely.
Joel.
Not necessarily on the DEIC thing, but something bouncing off of Councilor Dunsmuir's question is, will this cost money to the to our constituents, or basically to the community as they want to come in to the city? Is it going to cost them extra money? Second part is there something, or there's obviously got to be a legal description already out there through the county. If they're not part of the city, can we use the county's legal description of that property? Or can they get their hands on that legal description of the property to submit to the state? Because I would assume that the county is going to be somewhat in line with the state already if they're receiving tax on it as it is. So.
Yeah, the problem that we're having is not with the legal description that's coming in. It's that because everyone is pretty much able to use the legal description that's in the deed for the property. So pretty much everyone that's come in for annexation has had that. I mean, I said pretty much, but everyone has had that. The problem is that if there's not a filed survey or a recorded plat for the property, then it's really hard for the applicant to submit the illustration that has to very precisely and with perfect labels match the legal description. So that's what we're running into, is that the illustration part is missing, and so they'll submit something that is done by a surveyor, but it's not labeled in a way that is satisfactory to DOR. And so on the back end of that, you know, we get the rejection letter from DOR, and then basically I have to try to edit the illustration and do my best to mimic what a surveyor would do, and I am not a surveyor. And so it just results in a lot of staff time. And then to answer your first question, the ordinance, the draft that is included in your packet, absolutely would require, unless there's an existing recorded plat or filed survey for that property, then yeah, it would cost someone money to have a survey done and filed with the county. So that's one of the issues that that there is with that particular preliminary draft, definitely.
Okay, Joel.
And kind of along the same things. So assuming that the DEIC comes back and said that wouldn't be equitable or something, what options do we have as a city? Do we just continue to use our city time for you to do it, or what other options would there be if they didn't like the amendment or something?
If the DEIC didn't like the amendment, or if the council didn't want to move forward.
If the DEIC didn't like the amendment and they didn't recommend a change or something.
Right. Well, it would be up to the council whether to listen to the DEIC's advice, you know. But yeah, the other way that cities will account for a process taking a lot of staff time is through their fee schedule. So the other way that, you know, you could look at it is kind of revisiting the fee for an annexation. I think our annexation fee is already kind of high, although I don't know what it looks like for other jurisdictions. But compared with our other land use applications, it is a kind of it's $1,800 to file for an annexation, and a lot of our other land use applications are closer to the $800 or $900 range. So it is already a little bit pricey just in terms of fees, but if we found that the survey there wasn't a good way to force an applicant to provide a satisfactory survey, then we could look at, what kind of staff time does the city want to spend on this? Do you want to pass along the cost of that staff time to the applicant? If not, then are we just going to decide that this is something that we're okay with spending the staff time on? I think that's a conversation that you all could have and make that decision. That'd be helpful for us to be clear on, these applications are going to take that. We should expect to take that extra staff time after the decision. So it's up to you all.
Paul?
If at this point you're just looking for direction from the council, I'm all for it. Let's get the ball rolling and start the process. You've heard the concerns, and I share the same concerns as well too about the added costs, but I'd like to see what you come up with, and then we can have the discussion at the council level.
I concur with what he just said. What I do want to say, though, is that when we have this future discussion, you'd mentioned there was a document from the DOR that kind of shows what they require. I would really love to have that included in the packet the next time we have this discussion, just so that we can compare that document to what our current code says. And then that'll give us a more clear picture of what the barriers that we're facing as a city are. And I would really love to see that document the next time in our packet.
Can do.
Just a quick add-in, to add on to that, can you also bring the county's requirement for when they do their plats and stuff like that, what their requirements are? So I'd be kind of curious why the county's not doing it up to standard where we could use those type of recordings as well for it. I'd like to see what their requirements are.
Yeah, the county, that's, I'll see if the surveyor's office has some kind of resource that would be, digestible for that.
At this point, Mel, you're looking for a consensus. Is that what I'm getting here? So it doesn't have to be a vote or anything, just a consensus to proceed.
I think just a consensus that this is something that staff should look into.
All right, I think everybody's on that page. So consensus, great.
Okay. All right. Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next on the list, we have ordinance 2022-005, annexation and zone change, local file number 2022-01 annex. So who will I hand that to? Taylor again?
Yeah, this is just the, what we were just talking about, actually. The ordinance making official the annexation and zone change that you all just approved at the last meeting, which was that property 29995 Southeast Lawrence Road out by the airport.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion again on this one. Is that right? All right, do we have a motion on the floor?
Move to approve ordinance 2022-005, annexation and zone change, local file number 2022-01 annex.
Okay, first, do I have a second?
Second.
First and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. All right, next I have the ODOT right-of-way acquisition request.
All right, that's me. Thank you, Taylor. Okay, in your packet, you have a couple of, you have a picture that shows the acquisition they are trying to make. ODOT, everybody's probably noticed that ODOT's making improvements to the ADA ramps along the highway here. They have stopped at the one that's right out here on the corner by the stop sign, because in order to improve that one, it requires including a small portion of city property and just making their right of way a little bit bigger. And in the packet, I included like their drawing of where that would be. It's not much, but it does cut into the landscape a little bit. Since we're planning to make some revisions to Main Street next year, I just wanted to bring this to your attention before I just asked for you to approve it. Talk to the city attorney, talk to the city engineer. They both recommended that I get direction from the council to negotiate an agreement with ODOT that would, and ask them to consider altering that design. They could, obviously there still has to be a good turning radius there and everything, but they could potentially do a small bump out if they coordinated with our city engineer and maybe not have to cut back into, if they're trying to maintain that current curb line, that's what's pushing them back to have the space they need to meet the ADA requirements. And if we could get them to modify that and bump it out just a tad, then it would, and also make sure that they're allowing for the 10-foot sidewalks. City engineer mentioned that. Just let them know that we're doing this project. And they did ask me, they called back and said, when are you doing it? And are you doing it for sure? And so I told them it's early 2023 and that, yes, it is for sure that we're doing it. My thought was when they asked that is they would just perhaps wait till we do it and let us do it. But I think, I don't know if that's what they were really thinking or not. Because then she said, thank you. And that was all she wanted to know. She was going to take that answer back to them. So what I'm looking for tonight is any questions you have. They valued the land. I also included at about $800 for that little 36 square feet, which is kind of inconsequential. But if they could make some modifications, the attorney even said maybe, say we'll waive the $800 if you can modify it. But if they modify it, then they wouldn't have to buy it, so it wouldn't cost them $800 anyway. So anyway, I would like to request that the council would direct me to negotiate an agreement with them to try to coordinate on that design to not have to sell the property, but if it is necessary for the city to allow them to have that few feet there, then I would bring back a resolution to the council. The mayor would have to ultimately sign for the sale, but that is what I'm looking to do. Do you have any questions? Yes, Joel.
So many people have not been happy with this design they're putting out there. So my personal opinion is, and so let me rephrase that, my opinion from a standpoint of the city and what I think many others are thinking is we shouldn't take any part to help them make them continuing that horrible design out there, such as the zigzag design that they did that we can't take a wheelchair through, these so-called ADA compliant ramps that they have that we've had people that are vision impaired that have had troubles there, including people in wheelchairs. So I don't think as a city, we should help them in any way to continue that horrible design because no one seems to be happy with it from out here in the community. So at least no one that they're supposed to be designing it for. So that's my take on it.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? Being a good steward and a good neighbor, I have to agree with Joe. We've had some complaints about that from people who use those ramps, but at the same time, in good stewardship with ODOT, I think, asking them to put that off until we do our Main Street renovation would be our best bet. I think we're going to be addressing that anyway, and we might as well do it at the same time. So unless the council's got an argument to that or they want to do something else, that's fine. I'm not hearing anything.
No, I'd like, I'd like to just go ahead with, option A, and then if you could negotiate an agreement with ODOT. And
Okay.
I think we would do a little bit better job with a little more local control when we do the renovation of Main Street. Personally, I think we'll do a good job. I have faith in our city planners. And so if you could negotiate something, that would be wonderful. Yeah.
I'll go ahead, Jerry.
So I also I'm not a really big fan of the design that's happening and a lot of, I've had a lot of conversations with people that aren't happy with the existing design and looking at these pictures, I definitely don't want them cutting into, what we've already got there, what the beautiful landscaping that, that is there and in place. So I would prefer the bump out, if not just allowing us to do it during our Main Street project.
Katie?
I am not a person with any disabilities, so I don't want to speak to anyone's complaints because I don't personally experience any of the anything negative impact-wise from these upgrades that have been done to the highway. What I will say is someone who lives in the Lakeshore neighborhood, I actually have experienced safer walking across the highway, pedestrian traffic, I should say. It's a lot safer for me and my family to cross the highway now from the Lakeshore neighborhood to get to downtown. So I do see pedestrian safety features that ODOT is bringing in that I, as a person, appreciate. That being said, though, as a person, I also believe in digging once. And if we are already going to be redoing Main Street in a very short period of time, I would hate for somebody like ODOT to come in and redo a street corner only for us to look at them a year later and say, actually, you didn't do that the way that we wanted you to do it. And maybe you can help incorporate your upgrades into what our desired design is. And so for that purpose alone, I agree with everybody here that we should probably wait to have this discussion with ODOT until we get closer to when we ourselves are upgrading Main Street. So that everything meshes together and we're not having to go back and redig something that has already been dug recently, if that makes any sense.
Yes, that does make sense. I don't know that ODOT will be willing to wait that long. But I think to try to negotiate that with them, because city engineers already done some preliminary ideas for what the street will look like, the width of the sidewalk and how a slight bump out there might, he says it's hard to make a bump out there because Fifth or Jeremy Lovelace is so close. It doesn't seem very close, but it's close there. So he's taking that into consideration. But he also did, I asked him straight out, what if we just say no, don't want to do it at one of your all's requests. And he said that they could probably use eminent domain if they needed to, just because there's no other, they don't have any other option in their mind with their plan right now. They don't have, they can't say, well, I'm going to go get this land from somebody else. It's our land, it's the city land. And so they could do that. But he was also, the city engineer is also confident that he could work with ODOT to do a design there that would satisfy their need, probably not need our property. He said they did the same thing at a corner in Hubbard last year. And was able to negotiate that. So hopefully we don't have to flat out say no, but we can I'm pretty good at working with people to come up with alternatives. And so I think that is probably our best bet at this point. If you can just, I'll just take that direction to negotiate with them and and Councilor Litkey.
Joel, you had something else?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I just wanted to say my first response there was more of an immediate internal response and it was a little inflammatory. So I apologize for that, guys. It wasn't professional. But my question is this. They obviously didn't take much consideration in this work we had just did out here. We had just built all that. They tore it up. So when they go and tear our stuff up there and do it, whether we tell them no or not, and they use eminent domain, that's something I prefer them to force them into, because I don't agree that we should be helping them in any way, because it's a horrible project as it is, as many of our community members have expressed through many ways. But my question is, when we come to do our area, if they're going to do it anyways, and they come to do our area here, are we able to tear up their stuff and fix it to what we want, or are we going to be limited on that? I mean, what's our legal limits there, or do we know those answers?
Yeah, I don't know for sure on those answers. I don't think we'd want to tear it up and redo it. Plus it's in their right of way, right along the highway there. It kind of butts up against our right of way on Main Street. But also the city engineer said that he believes that they're doing those ADA improvements throughout the state. They're doing them because of a lawsuit. So they're kind of being pushed to get them done. But I agree. I have walked the highway and put on my little engineer hat, which I'm not an engineer, but just kind of from a personal standpoint going, how is that helpful? Or what is the purpose of that? And I think it's been difficult to adjust to them, but I'm sure that they're meeting the standards, which is what they are required to do. And I did talk to our district director about the zigzag one. And I told him that, and I think I set this out in a Friday report, that we had been told that it was difficult, if not feasible, to get a wheelchair through there. And he sent his guys out to look at it, said they're going to fix those things that got knocked over, the things that stand up. Yeah, the reflectors. They're still not fixed, but he was going to check into that further, so I can check back with him. But I know they're meeting standards. I know they're trying to do the best they can. They don't see necessarily our plan. And so I think to negotiate with them and try to get it to fit with our plan is probably our best bet
I
at this
think you got a
point.
Consensus around here working.
Yeah, and if we can design it with them and make it how we want it, and then they build it, even better for us, financially. So thank you though for all the concerns.
Thank you.
So is that all right? If I'll go ahead and do that?
Yep, just go ahead. and
Okay.
proceed.
All right. And if it's necessary, if we can't come up with any other solution, we'll draft a resolution and bring it back to you. But we'll sure work hard to try to get that compromise there.
All right, great, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next on the list, I have Public Safety Committee Development. So you've had some time to look into that. Where are we at on that?
All right. What I have put in the packet there is a couple of examples of the code, one from Happy Valley, one from Milwaukee. One of the council goals that was identified at the goal setting session was to establish a public safety committee to research and recommend, first step, research and recommend a structure and objectives for that public safety committee. And so I spoke with at the contract cities with the sheriff's office, and Happy Valley, Wilsonville, and Estacada are all contracted with them. Talked about it. They highly recommended Happy Valley's model, said it works really well. And the sheriff's office is really, it's helpful to them. And so I watched their meeting that they had last Thursday evening. And I was going to kind of delve into the weeds about that, but I won't. But they do so much. First of all, they listened to their police chief's report. Like you guys got the monthly report and the annual report. They walked through that whole thing, and it's kind of a workshop style where they were able to discuss it with them, ask questions. Then they also, they work on things like National Night Out, walk and roll to school day with safe routes to school. They didn't really talk about street lighting or anything, but if somebody has a concern about an intersection with crosswalk or speeds in a neighborhood, they will, if it's cut and dry, staff will just make it happen. And if there's money to do it, if not, it can go to them to be prioritized. And so they do a lot of work. It was a really great meeting. My question to you is I like to keep it really specific and easy. Like when I read it, I know exactly what that means. And I like Happy Valley's example there. That they're an advisory board to the city council. And there was one that was advising the city council and staff and the police chief. It was like a whole bunch, but I think your advisory councils, you really wanted them advising you. But we have a lot of other committees also. And is there too much overlap? Are there things that, and I think maybe you're nodding your head, Councilor Dunsbury, you might want to speak to that. There might be other committees that might want to pick up National Night Out, or might want to pick up if somebody is talking about speeds in a neighborhood or needing a new crosswalk. That might be like our infrastructure committee. And so I'd like you guys to discuss it and give me some feedback. And I'd like to start to try to draft this ordinance so that we can, if you want to get this in place, we can do that.
That overlap you were speaking to is my biggest concern. When I read through the sort of like the duties that Happy Valley and Milwaukee give to their public safety committees, the first thing I wonder is, well, what would our infrastructure committee do at that point? Because our infrastructure committee develops and recommends coordinated traffic safety and public safety programs. I mean, that's what our infrastructure committee does. Recommends traffic safety and public safety priorities for the city. review and recommend project applications for funding. Well, we've got other committees that are already basically doing that. I'm just looking at everything, and I could point to a committee that we already have within our city that's already tasked with that. And really, if our infrastructure committee is already tasked with all these things, but they're only meeting on a quarterly basis, then maybe we could have them start meeting on a monthly basis and actually giving them more stuff to do. And if we needed to, essentially rename that committee. I mean, because really that committee already does these things that we're looking at.
Joel?
There's another way to approach it, I believe. You said that you spoke with our contract law enforcement and they really liked how these things are working. You worked well with them. You saw good benefits out of it. So I think if it's a model that we've already seen is working, a public safety committee and a model we know it works, that the law enforcement know works well with them, I think to draft a new committee that fits that particular model using what's existing. And if it overlaps in the infrastructure committee, if a portion of what they would be doing is all the infrastructure committee does, maybe disbanding the infrastructure committee would be a better idea. And then simply building off the model we have there. And then if the infrastructure committee was disbanded and we wanted to move those few tasks into there, we give those on the infrastructure committee a chance to apply to be on that if they choose. But she's right about the overlap. But I think using a model we know is working, that the law enforcement enjoys, it's shown to be productive, would probably be, if anything broke, don't fix it type of approach.
Thank you.
Charity?
Well, I really like the idea of having a public safety committee. I know it's been very successful in other communities, and I think that there's a way that we can, as a city of Estacada, make it work, and where there's no overlap, and either we can leave the infrastructure committee. I mean, this is all something we can work out and, down the road. But I see our town growing, and it's just going to continue to grow. So it's inevitable that I think it would be a very good idea to get the ball rolling sooner rather than later. And then we can work out the who does what on what committee down the road. But I really do like the way Happy Valley laid it out, plain English, nothing, fancy there. Milwaukee had a couple, I like their draft as well. Item F seemed a little odd to me. It seemed like a little extra, but I like the way Happy Valley worded it. It's simple, it's clear, it's concise. So what I'm seeing as far as public safety goes, like it would be more in that direction. And I know that that's in other communities, those committees meet with more frequency than other committees. So I think we could separate that overlap real easy. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Katie and then Jerry.
I guess more of a question to this board would be, if we have a public safety committee that is already looking at the monthly report that we get from CCSO, and they have as a committee the opportunity to ask questions to the police chief and to have a greater understanding of where the crime is occurring and what we as a city can do better and all that kind of stuff. Would we then not have that conversation as a city council? Would we delegate that task now goes to them and we're not going to have that conversation anymore? Or is that conversation now going to happen 2 times in our city? And now our police chief has to have that conversation with 2 different boards, where they're having it with the public safety committee board and our board? Or would we just delegate that task to that new commission? I'm just curious on that because that seems redundant to me.
Jerry first and then Joel. Paul, sorry.
Okay, so I too like the idea of having a public safety committee, and I also like Happy Valley's example. But I think that rather than creating a new committee, I like the idea of at least we can have a conversation with the infrastructure committee, and we can merge, or basically put all of these tasks on the infrastructure committee that again meets quarterly rather than monthly like every other committee other than budget. So I think that, rather than creating a new committee, we put it to the infrastructure committee. And if anybody on the infrastructure committee is not comfortable with the new, then at that point they can step down, and then we can appoint other people onto that committee if they're not comfortable with meeting once a month rather than quarterly, or if they're not comfortable with the task being, added to their, to their current tasks, then we give them the option of stepping down, and then we appoint someone to, to the committee. So rather than creating a committee, I would be for just adding these tasks to the infrastructure committee, even renaming it, however, public safety and infrastructure, however it has to be. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I am also like the idea of having a committee like this as well, too. I think I'm torn somewhere between just going ahead and renaming the committee or just as Charity said, get the ball rolling and then work out the details down the line. Like Happy Valley's formula as well, too. To the question about having the sheriff talk to us twice. My thought is we would be putting a public safety committee in place. We would be charging them with this activity of meeting with the sheriff. We would trust them then to come to us with any concerns or any issues that they might find. So I think having them do it as a primary would be the way to go. Joel.
A couple things to speak to. First, to the sheriff piece, I agree with what Paul was saying. Would be my intent when I first brought it forward, is the sheriff would meet with the public safety committee, and then if something needed to be elevated, so there's a concern that there was something that the sheriff wanted to speak to the council about, or something, or they felt that they should speak to us about, then they would elevate that and we'd meet with him accordingly. But having it go to the public safety committee would be, that's what they're focusing on. Now to the infrastructure piece, my concern with that one is this: when we appointed people to the infrastructure piece, we didn't appoint them for all the things that be responsibilities and tasks that go with a public safety committee. They didn't apply for it. Yeah, we could ask them and things like that, but I think by creating a new one, maybe considering to allow those that are on there to take a seat, or to have them reapply and give them preferential consideration because they're already on a committee or something, might be something we can do on there. But to have a new one, we'd also want to open that up to the community too, that might also want to have a shot to be able to go for that as well. They might also have something to bring to the table, and expertise, prior law enforcement, things like that. That might be a good plug in there that may want to be part of that, that would fit well on a public safety committee, and allow for it to be a mix rather than just saying, hey, we hired you for this job. We hired you to be a baker, but now we want you to go be an electrician. We want to make sure that the people we put on the committees want to be on there, that we've considered when we appointed them to there, what they're able to do, and that we opened it up to allow the community to it as well. And I think we would be undercutting that piece of it, because we know when we want people to come onto the committees, we've already said we have to advertise it for a certain period of time and everything. And I think there would be a kind of a low current way to kind of subcut that. And I think there would probably be probably upset people in the community about that, because I know it's been a big thing since they've seen it. I've heard the buzz around town about it. So that's something to consider.
Charity, you have another question?
Oh, I just wanted to address, I think there was a question as to would somebody from the sheriff's office would have to go to a couple of meetings. A lot of times they'll just assign sometimes just a sergeant that's on staff to just zoom in, or a PIO. So they have people in more administrative positions that can just jump into those meetings. And then it's usually no big deal, especially in PIOs. That's like all they do. So I don't think it's going to be a huge burden on the sheriff's office to just, add a meeting to a sergeant's day. I don't know. But so I think that's probably what they would do. And like Counselor Licky was saying, I think they would primarily be meeting with, I would like to see them just primarily meeting with that committee, and then the committee coming to us if there's an issue, or, we have somebody on council who can take an extra, take more time and go to one of those committees and either, sit for their meetings or liaison or whatever, and then bring back any feedback. And then we'd have our sheriff's report, but then we'd also have a little bit of feedback from that committee. And the PIO wouldn't even need to zoom in or be here for that. So.
Katie and then Jerry.
I don't want anyone to think that I'm not into the idea of a public safety committee. This is an idea that I personally explored in 2019 after I was elected. I ended up meeting with a lot of different people from a lot of different public safety type of agencies, fire, police. And it's one of those things where it has a potential to be really, really successful. It also has a potential to not do much. That being said, I would love to know more specifics of what an Estacada Public Safety Committee would look like that wasn't overlapping with the duties of other existing committees. Or if we are, as a council, open to disbanding some of our committees. I mean, really, if we're going to give the duties of, how did Happy Valley word it? Sorry, I've got like multiple tabs open because I'm trying to do research at the same time. I mean, provide research and information to the city on matters related to traffic and public safety. That's infrastructure. In fact, all 7 points really in the Happy Valley example really point to traffic safety and public safety. And there's not a whole lot of other things that they do. Foster public knowledge and support of traffic law enforcement, public safety, and traffic engineering problems and needs. That sounds to me like an infrastructure problem. So I would be more open when I am more aware of the specifics of what Estacada's public safety is actually going to achieve, that we don't already have people in our city trying to achieve already. And I would hate to see a group of people come together thinking that they're going to just change the way that we have our police, patrolling the city, because that's just not going to happen, or thinking that they're going to come in and be able to provide input to our fire department that they're going to be following, because that's not going to happen either. And I would just really hate to have a group of people getting together into a room with all these great ideas that are just never going to be implemented.
Okay, Jerry first, and then I want to say one thing before we.
Okay, so looking at our current infrastructure committee, so we have 4 members from the community on the infrastructure committee, 2 whose terms are expiring at the end of this year, 2 who are through till 2024, December 31st, 2024. We have a representative from PGE and we have a representative from Reliance Connects. So if we were to rename the infrastructure committee, we could put 3 more people from the community in this, because we can go up to 7, correct? 7 people on our committees. So we could put 3 more people from the committee or from the community on this infrastructure committee. So we would have ample time and placement to get those people. Plus, at the end of the year, if we end up doing this before the end of the year, at the end of the year, 2 more seats open up for more people from the public to join. And what's not to say, I mean, I'm completely comfortable looking at the names on this list, having them be part of public safety committee, knowing everybody except for one person, I believe. I don't want to see another committee added for the sake of adding a committee when we already have a committee in place that can take on any extra added responsibilities because they only meet quarterly. I just think that, merging or putting that responsibility into the infrastructure committee, looking at the names on this committee, I have no problem with them being part of that. And then also we could add those 3 seats now, and then 2 more seats would be opening up at the end of the year. So there would be ample opportunity for the rest of the community to get involved.
All right, before we go any further, I'm going to speak on this. We're talking about public safety here. If this was any group but that, I would say, great, maybe we could combine or take a little away here and do that. We are growing at such a rate, and the crime rate is just going through the roof, and it's coming out here. We're starting to see it. Public safety is probably the most important group that I think we've ever looked at. And we're sitting here saying we can dump it on infrastructure and it's the same thing. Really? Are you really going to say that? Because it isn't. It isn't the same thing. It's totally different. It might have a few wording here and there, but it is different. And cities have it for a reason, because their people feel safe because they have a public safety group. This is what we're talking about here. So if you're asking me, I'm in favor of a public safety. And, I think we can beat this back and forth because it seems that's what we're kind of doing right now. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Melanie, and let you
Okay.
say what you need.
Yeah, so just to kind of summarize, I appreciate all of the input. I think the question is really what, that we like the example of Happy Valley. We like a working model that we could just implement. And maybe I could have, I don't know for sure. In fact, I'm meeting with the infrastructure committee in just a couple of weeks. So I could even bring this up and say, hey, would you like to expand your duties and have a public safety and infrastructure? But they also do, they look at the plants and they look at, Dawn usually reports on public works projects and water lines and sewer lines and expansion of systems and things like that. So there's some overlap, but it definitely would be, let me consider that to see, because there's also maybe Parks and Rec could do the walk and roll to school day or, so there might be we might be able to parse these out to other committees. But the other ones, with the exception of infrastructure, they do a lot of stuff already. And so, if we can identify what this committee would do, I feel like there's support for that to go ahead and I know we don't want to just randomly just be having committee here, committee there. But if this is something that could be productive, then, so I'll kind of rehash that, rethink it. I'll talk to Happy Valley a little more. I'll talk to Chief Mendoza and see, and I'll talk to infrastructure committee and then bring back some more ideas to you. So, yeah. And do we have one more time for?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to throw out, I've brought up so many times to this council, crime prevention through environmental design. The idea, if you don't want people lurking in dark corners, get rid of the dark corners. I want to thank PGE and the city of Estacada for installing additional lighting down in the Lakeshore neighborhood. I put a thing on Facebook about it. It honestly looks awesome. And I, as a resident in the Lakeshore neighborhood, feel so much safer because I can see the people who are walking on the sidewalks at night, because the cars that are parking on those sidewalks have light on them that are going to deter people from siphoning gas or taking catalytic converters or just breaking through the window and taking stuff out of the car. And it's those tiny little details that we can improve in our infrastructure, that we can design our environment to then help prevent that crime. I don't think, though, once you get a crime, or if you got a public safety committee, I don't think that it's actually going to prevent crime from happening. And if you think our crime rate is going up, then we need to be having a better conversation with our police department, because that's what they're supposed to be tasked with. That being said, I just don't think that putting all of the eggs into a basket that is a feel-good basket of we call it public safety, then we'll make people feel safer. I don't think that would actually accomplish anything other than giving people the warm and fuzzies. But crime prevention through environmental design, if we actually gave that sort of task to the infrastructure committee, they have a representative from PGE that is already on that committee. So when we tell PGE that we need them to improve lighting in a certain area of the city that is experiencing higher crime, then there's a representative already on that committee right there ready to listen to those ideas of how to improve the safety around the city. And a lot of those SEPTED ideas are really related to infrastructure and nothing else.
Can I ask you one more question, Melanie? Is there a way this could be put to a vote right now to actually have a public safety group, and we can just go from there? So we don't have to weigh this out. I don't want it to go through all the different channels, come back again, analyze where we're at. We know where we're at. Okay. I think everybody's got a good grasp of where we're at with public safety and where we need to be. So I'm asking, can we put a vote out to actually incorporate a public safety group into our city now at this meeting, so that we don't have to?
I think you could make a motion and second that and take a vote on it sounds wishy-washy, on working on it, on coming back with more details on that, on moving in that direction. Or you could just direct me to move in that direction of a separate committee, because I feel like that's probably the larger group, like the most votes would go to having a separate committee at this point. And so I can check with like Happy Valley, see if they have other committees and how they keep those separate. Or if they have that same conversation, do they feel like there's overlap and that they have too many committees? I could do some more research. I don't know. I think I know that the bulk of you want to do a separate committee. And I am totally fine with that. And I guess that's the direction I will go. But if I come up with like a roadblock or a hiccup that says, this is not turning out how I think you will be happy with it, then we could look at, alternatives. But I think
Great. Jerry's got a question. and then-
Well, no, I just have a statement. I don't want anybody to misconstrue what I've been saying up here. I am not against a public safety committee. I'm not against it. What I'm trying to get through is the fact that if this is something that a committee that meets 4 times a year, we can add this to that committee, grow that committee. And, if we can add this to that committee, grow that committee, that would be a better solution to me than going through and creating a whole new committee. I am not against a public safety committee at all, not in the slightest. So I just want everybody to understand that I'm not against the public safety committee. I just think that if this committee that we already have that only meets 4 times a year, if we can add these responsibilities onto them, if they will accept them. And then we grow that committee by adding the new members to get them up to the standards of the rest of the committees and, in our city government. I think that would be a very good way to go.
Joel and then Jerry.
Okay. So first, when I picture a public safety committee, I don't think it's something we meet 4 times a year. I see that a monthly committee that meets like any other one does.
Yes.
I'm very against forming a public safety committee out of another committee because I think we have a working model. I say we take a working model, we use exactly what they got, and then we can make some adjustments to other committees as seen fit. But that, like Mayor Drinkwine has said, that is probably one of the most important things we're going to do, because public safety and the safety in your home, your community is what is so important to people. I'm not talking about a feel-good piece here. I'm talking about actual safety. That means that there's people on this community that they're charged with analyzing the data, determining actual solutions, whether it be environmental, whether it be community awareness, which is probably more effective than environmental. When I went through victimology in school, I went to school for criminal justice. Victimology was a big thing that we learned about. It had nothing to do with environmental safety. It had a lot to do with awareness and understanding of your environment. That's one thing, and not putting yourself there. But environmental safety that I think she's referring to is making sure that you don't create the system. It's a mix of those. And we get community members that have those skills and knowledge that I'm sure will apply to that. That be prior law enforcement. We have people that have been worked in different parts of the cities that also may have experienced these things and had things that they wanted to put in. And we have a lot of those people in the community. We're known as Cop Town to a lot of people because we have a lot of law enforcement out here. I bet you there's a lot of law enforcement who want to get involved in this one because they want to save the community. Who better to put in there? But to have something that's already a proven model. I mean, I don't see the wisdom in trying to alter something. Basically, again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Take a working model, plug it in. And if we have to make a minor adjustment later to something else, that's okay. But to try to morph something and to make it fit in a square peg round hole thing, I just don't think it's going to be fitting her. And I think we're going to find more broken pieces of that in the long run than just getting a good fresh start from the ground up. It's faster. I think it's more effective. I think we'll get a better response from the community. I think law enforcement will be better and happier with it because they'll be able to plug right into it. There's so many benefits to it versus trying to force something into that. We can adjust things as we need to go. And that's what I have to say about it.
Okay, thank you. I'll just try to be brief. I know people are kind of focusing on just the 7 that Happy Valley has mentioned, but I also just want to that's why I said I liked both of these models with Milwaukee. So item B is review and make recommendations for city community partnerships to mitigate the negative influence of crime and traffic impacts on the community. So just keeping that in mind, that's just a little bit different than the 7 up there. And also item E, collaborate with local, county, and state government agencies to develop strategies to mitigate negative community livability concerns by focusing partnership agency resources to reduce or eliminate specific problem areas or concerns. So that's a little bit more than just infrastructure. So you've got people on this committee who are listening to people in the neighborhoods or at school board meetings, or, you're picking your kids up from dance or whatever. And they're saying, we've kind of got like the street with some problems. There's this house in this one neighborhood. And that public safety committee then goes back to the sheriff's office liaison or whomever it may be and say, hey, we've been getting a lot of reports from the public safety or from community members. And so maybe could you just have, one of the deputies who are on patrol just kind of, it just puts a bug in their ear, because this is what happens out in like Troutdale and Corbett. It puts a bug in their ear to like keep an eye on some problem areas. So it's not just infrastructure specific, even though that's a really like huge concern and an area that public safety tackles, but it's also puts the problem areas, as is mentioned in item E, kind of puts the bug in the ear of Clackamas County, and they can kind of focus on those areas a little bit more. And when there's more, when there's more patrol in those areas, and it kind of starts to scare off the riffraff. But they have been effective. I do know that for a fact. I mean, I can't speak. I can only speak for the agency that I'm more familiar with and how effective it's been in those communities. But from what you were saying, Melanie, is that this has been very effective in Happy Valley as well. And although we are not Happy Valley, but we are just going to continue to grow. And as we grow, more and more people in the community will stop stepping back and taking responsibility. I notice in small towns, and I'm getting kind of tangential, but I know in small towns, people wear many hats, and but as communities grow, the hats kind of get taken off and people are like, oh, somebody else has it. Oh, somebody else has it. And then before you know it, you're in a big town and nobody's taking responsibility for anything. So as we grow, I'm seeing the need for things such as this to start happening. And anyway, I'm for
Thank
it.
you.
I think you've
All
got
right.
direction.
I have a lot of direction and input from you. I thank you for that. And I will work on compiling that, coming back with the next iteration of this, and see, where we can go with that. And yeah, it's a good discussion though. So thank you. I need to process that a little bit.
All right. Okay, last item on the council business is high-level water reservoir for number 5 funding.
Okay, yes. And this is just a discussion that I wanted to bring up because the city engineer pointed out that tomorrow is a deadline for a letter of intent for a loan, for the water system, a loan from Business Oregon. And I believe that you have been kept informed that there's another high-level water reservoir that we need to construct, right? Okay. So we have one. It serves about, I think it was 500 homes the last time I heard, and that's just growing. And we don't have any redundancy for that. If something happens and that goes out, there's no water for those homes. So this second high-level water reservoir would provide that redundancy, and it would provide extra storage as we're growing. We're going to need more water capacity. So the city engineer right now is looking, we've identified some property that would be ideal for it. The property owner is agreeable. City engineer has a whole process to go through as far as getting an appraisal and then getting the appraisal reviewed. And there's multiple steps that this will take to get that approved, to put it up there. It's just off Lawrence Road. And then there's the whole water pipe to get to that and bring water back to the system. It'll be kind of the loop system. So we're planning for its construction. We're planning to pay for it with system development charge fees, SDCs. And so we won't need to increase the user fees for water in order to make this happen. It's an SDC project because it expands the system, but it will cost about $2.5 million. And we've planned for that. And we have that partially budgeted at this point, and we would be able to just pay for it. However, Business Oregon is offering a loan of 1.65% would be the rate. And so we'd like to put in this letter of interest. Kurt says doesn't mean we have to get the loan, but if we start moving on this project, it would just, if we got that loan, it would give us flexibility in our funding, and then we can pay it off early, or we could use the money for if we need to do something else and part of the water system to expand it. Our SDCs could go towards that. So he really wants to just put in, and I agree, to put in the letter of interest. Otherwise, it will be 6 months before it comes around again. And so if we do that, then we could potentially request a loan from them. But one of the things they want to know is, has it been discussed at a council meeting, which you have discussed the need for that we do need to have it. And when it's going to start, which is we're already in the process of working that out. The finance, we don't necessarily have to take this loan, but to have the option is a positive thing. And then local comprehensive land use plan is we make sure I'm not a planner, but we would make sure that it's fitting in with that where it's located. So we'd like to get just agreement that that's all right to go ahead and put that in. And then I'd also like to talk about the wastewater program that they have, but I can take a question if that's fine.
Thank you, Mayor. Quick question,
Mhm.
and I think I know the answer, but I'm for putting in the paperwork, but the question would be, if we decided to try to get that flexibility, we went with a loan, would there be any cost increase to the community or user members?
No, there would not be.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I didn't see anything in our packet pertaining to this.
There was none.
And I personally don't like to agree to anything until I know specifics and see documentation and stuff. So that being said, I mean, are we able to say, yes, we'd like the letter to be sent, but then if the, Business of Oregon or whatever comes back to us and says, good news, we're going to give you the loan, can we then change our minds at that time once we get more specific information and we look at the
Yes.
terms and say, you know what, never mind, we changed our mind?
Yes, because
Okay.
this isn't even an application. This is like the pre-application that says we might want to apply. So
Okay.
this is, we would have to go through a whole application that I could put that whole thing in the packet for you at that time if we decide that that's the best thing to do.
Okay.
I think we got consensus around
Okay.
the table there to
All right.
proceed with just the intent.
Just the letter of intent, just in case. That's our just in case letter. Also, then Business Oregon has a wastewater program, and that letter of intent will be due in April. So Kurt suggested I bring it up tonight since we're talking about it anyway. For that, it's going to cost us close to $25 million to build a new wastewater facility. And so what we'll be doing is looking in a lot of different places where we'll be kind of shopping that out. Probably, I think he has one place, I can't remember the name of the town, but USDA did like partial loan and partial grant for that. And the USDA loans are really low interest rate. I think that's the one he was talking about. Yeah. And there's other options. So we'll be looking in multiple places for that, but he would also like to, and recommends putting in a letter of intent for Business Oregon. And I'm not sure if you wanted to do the whole amount or just partial amount.
I think we were going to
Do the full amount of 25 million, just in case. Right. Okay. Sadie's just catching my details that I'm forgetting. But yes, so we would put in a letter of intent for the full amount of $25 million with Business Oregon. I don't even know if they would loan that much, but we'll ask and we'll say, this is what we need. It'll get the ball rolling. Because that's one of the question came up earlier is, are we going to get started on property acquisition and looking at the best location and then also funding. So if it's all right for him to do that in April, we'll go ahead and put in a letter of intent for that one, just gets us in line. Again, that one will come around. It comes around every 6 months. So we could do it later, but he said sooner is better just to start identifying our sources because we're going to need some. And that one, I don't know about the rates on that one yet, so I can't give you that information.
I think it's good to have the intent out
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
In case we need it, but at the same time, if we looked into the federal infrastructure rebuilds, I know that falls into that category. So we
Yeah,
might be
we
able to get some
will.
funding.
I have not yet, but we will be looking at all those options. And there's a lot of infrastructure money coming into Oregon, I know also. So we'll be looking at all that
Okay, great.
big stuff coming up.
Well, thank you. We appreciate all that you do.
Okay.
Katie?
I've heard of some cities in Oregon using community development block grants. Is that is that an option we're exploring as well?
Yes, Kurt recommended that because I
Oh,
just applied for a community development block grant. And then maybe if there's a different program that I was not aware of, but we applied for putting the ADA ramps, going up Main Street. I think we're going to get it. I haven't got the final confirmation yet. Uptown on Broadway on Main Street, there's some ADA ramps that are in bad shape or are non-existent. And so I believe we're going to get funding and they're going to go through and change those for us. But Kurt said, what you need to do is get that money for the wastewater treatment plant with the CDBG funds. I'm like, I think that's like all the money the county gets is that much. And he's like, yeah, you're right. So we will look at many options though. And that we might end up with, funding sources that we have multiple funding sources for it, but there's good options out there. So,
Good job.
Yeah.
Good job.
all right. So we will send in those letter of intent, which is just more work for Kurt and I will sign it.
All right. Well, I'm at the next citizen and community group comment section. Do I have any comments? Online or otherwise? No? Okay. Moving along, we're at the mayor council reports and comments. So I will start off with you, Jerry.
Okay, so first off, as always, thank you, staff. You're amazing. Tonight was just indicative of every meeting that we always get great information, and then to you, my members or my colleagues on council, I guess. Thank you guys for tonight. The workshop was awesome. We had great discussions, and even during this meeting, we had great discussions. I really do appreciate it. And now to address my Facebook comment, I stand behind my Facebook comment. Nothing that I said in that comment, let me rephrase this. Everything that I stated in that comment were facts. No one on this council is currently working to turn Red Fox into a homeless shelter. No one on this council has gone out and solicited trying to bring someone into Estacada to create a homeless shelter. I stand behind that. Those are facts. My issue with the original post was something that was a dead issue, something that wasn't a council issue to begin with. It was something that someone else outside of the city of Estacada was trying to bring out here. But it's over with. This is not happening in Estacada. But no one on this council is working or has worked to bring a homeless shelter to Estacada. I stand behind that. My issue was bringing up a dead issue months after the fact. That's where I have that issue. It's just bringing something back to people's attention that is a dead issue, like it's bringing it out like it's a current problem when it's not. That was my problem with the statement or with the post. I made my statement. I almost deleted it, but I couldn't delete it because nothing that I said was a lie. Everything that I said was based on facts. So I apologize if it creates any issues with anybody, but I just stated facts. That's all I did. And thank you guys. Again, thank you guys for a great meeting again.
Thank you.
This being the first city council meeting that we have had since the petition for the recall campaign turned in their ballot or their signatures, and they did not turn in enough valid signatures to make it to a ballot in May. I just want to express to everybody, thank you for reaching out to me and expressing your support in the last couple of months. I'm just really looking forward to moving forward and being productive as a council, knowing that we have different voices and that's okay. And I'm just looking forward to the end of my term in December. You know, when I was elected as a 28-year-old woman, I stood out like a sore thumb being the youngest county or city councilor in Clackamas County. I think Commissioner Paul Savas called me out in a city meeting for that one time. And I stood out like a sore thumb, and I had several people, of course, ask me what I wanted to do after city council. And to be honest with you, at first politics was fun. Really felt like I was making positive changes, really felt like, you know, that people wanted to see some level of change. And I told them, you know, gosh, if I'm going to keep doing this, I'm going to have to get paid for it because this is a volunteer position. And I'm spending quite a big part of my life doing this. And, you know, my two kids are growing older every day, and I'm going to, I'm at this point, I'm just going to move away to the wayside and focus on my children when my term is up. I promised Estacada back in 2018 that I would see the end of 4-year term, and I plan on doing that and giving it my all, as I always have done, because that's who I am. That being said, I don't think that this is for the faint of heart. I don't think that this is for movers and shakers. Apparently, when you try to move and shake, you upset a lot of people. But I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to sit in this chair. And I want to thank you for your support during the 3.5, almost by the end of this whole thing, 4-year term that I'll have served. And I wish nothing but the best for the city of Estacada and for every single person sitting at this table and every single person sitting in this audience and on Facebook. And whether you're inside city limits or outside of city limits, I've only ever wanted the best, and I have done my hardest to try to help that. And so thank you to everybody. Thank you, staff. Thank you, counselors, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good. I didn't expect that, but thank you. Paul.
I just want to say we had a great housing needs analysis open house this past week. Thanks for those who showed up for that. And it's good to see some faces here as well, too. It was a good listening session. It was a good time to get input from the consultants and then input from the folks in the community as well, too. Appreciate you seeing the folks that were there here as well. Hope to see you more often. We definitely hear your comments and do our best to get those put into place. We thank you.
John.
Thank you guys for putting together a good packet. There was a lot of stuff in there, and thank you for working towards that safety committee. I know that it was something we just put on there not even a month ago, and we're already getting moving on it, which is awesome. Thank you so much for that. Thank you everybody for attending here. It's the first meeting without a mask. I'm very excited about that because that was hard to hold a mask during the previous meetings, and I can't find my shield. So that was even harder. So good, robust discussions tonight. I think we've had a good layout on there and stuff. So, and yeah, there's been a lot of good movements on things in the town. In just the short time I've been here, we're putting in a new sewer system. We've been able to implement a few new policies, working at public safety committee. There's been some stuff coming in for some new housing. You know, this is a lot of cool stuff coming on. We went through hard time over the last 2 years. I think we're kind of at the end of that finally. So I'm kind of looking forward to see what the next, the rest of this now unrestricted year has to bring about it. So thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you. Charity.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming out tonight, and thank you staff and counselors and Mr. Mayor for a good evening of discussion. I can't wait to see what you come back with, Melanie, as far as a lot of this information we talked about with the dispensaries and public safety committee and stuff. So I look forward to continuing that with everyone. Appreciate all the work that you've put into the packets every, couple of weeks. As always, it's a lot. And I do appreciate everybody up here. It's like Counselor Dunsmuir said, it's volunteer. It's a thankless job. And, everybody out there in Facebook land and in the city of Estacada doesn't really know what's kind of going on in our private lives. And we all have our stuff. And so I always try to look at the good in people and people's intentions. And I would just encourage our community to do the same. And we've just been through so much the past 2 years. I just really want to see us try and work through a lot of things instead of hating on each other. So, but yeah, I appreciate everybody being, civil this evening, and I look forward to more discussion from the community as well. And yeah, that's all I got.
Well, thank you, Charity. And on my part, thank you. You're sitting in those chairs. Without you, this doesn't exist. So, you know, you're pretty much why we're here, volunteer or not. Everything that you want, this is your town. This is everything that you've asked for. We will always fight to make sure that happens. And sometimes we fight each other. It's a hard day up here sometimes. But I gotta say, each and every one of these people up here do the job they were elected to do. And we will try to continue that job as long as you'll have us. So we thank you, the people of Estacada, because that's really what it's all about. So thank you. And thanks, staff. All right, so I'm gonna adjourn this meeting.